Now, where is her turquoise scarf? That will definitely complete my look. I was raiding Mom's closet to find it when I accidentally dropped a belt on the floor. But strangely enough, it made a really weird sound. So I gave it a few knocks. Wait, it did sound like the ground was hollow. I took a closer look. And oh my God, there was a hidden hatch or something in my mom's closet. Of course, I had to figure this out. So after a few attempts, I finally managed to open it and found a big wooden box. Why was she keeping something a secret from us? I took a deep breath and I opened the box. There were some old pics of my mom when she was younger, an old teddy bear, and some cassette tapes. Why on earth did she have to hide these? I dug even deeper and found a stack of letters. All of them were from the same address. Hang on, I knew that place. It was an orphanage just outside the city. So far, nothing made sense to me, so obviously I had to read them. They were all from this orphanage sister called Anna Maria. She kept writing about some girl named Eliza, and the more I read, I eventually realized that this girl, Eliza, was my mom's daughter. That meant I had a half-sister? I couldn't believe it. And from the sounds of things, my mom hadn't seen Eliza since the day she'd dropped her at the orphanage. So my mom didn't even know what she looked like after all these years? This was insane! How could mom have done this? Not to mention the fact my dad is a politician, so I'd been raised to always be a good person, just like them. But after what I just found out, I didn't know what to believe anymore. This is so absurd. But one thing was for sure, I had to find Eliza. The next day after school, I went to the orphanage. I told Anna Maria everything, and then she said that Eliza had left when she turned 18, but that she came back every weekend to help out. She then gave me Eliza's home address. I followed Google Maps and ended up in a seriously creepy neighborhood. As I knocked on her door, a billion questions ran through my head. What if she didn't want anything to do with us? What if she hated me because I stole this great life that was supposed to be hers? But there was no backing down now. As soon as the door opened, I froze. Could this really be my half-sister? Standing there was this tall, mysterious-looking girl. I was trembling as I said, "Hi, are you Eliza?" She just gave me a skeptic look, then replied, "Why? Who are you?" I couldn't hold back my tears and said, "I can't believe I found you. I'm Alicia, your half-sister." Eliza looked shocked and then said, "Oh, okay, calm down. Come on in, then we'll talk." I sat on the couch and told her everything. Then she began to tell me how miserable her life was, how she worked 4 jobs and it still wasn't enough to pay the bills. Gosh, I felt so guilty hearing all of this. How was it fair that I had a carefree, happy life and she'd been left all alone? I couldn't leave Eliza like that. I had to do something. After that, I rushed home and dragged Mom to my room so I could speak to her privately. I confronted her, and at first she denied it, but she eventually burst into tears and admitted everything. I couldn't believe my ears when I heard the whole story. When she was 18, she'd given birth to Eliza, but Eliza's dad wouldn't take any responsibility. So my mom decided to raise Eliza on her own. It was tough for her, as she didn't have a decent job. Then after about 6 months, my dad appeared and showed interest in her, and because he came from a wealthy family, my mom jumped at the chance to be with him. However, she thought that if he knew about Eliza, he wouldn't be keen. So with a heavy heart, she decided to send Eliza to the orphanage. Ever since then, she'd sent a letter to Anna Maria every year on Eliza's birthday. But she asked her not to send any photos of Eliza, as it was too painful to see. I couldn't believe my mom gave up her daughter for money. I begged my mom to meet up with Eliza. She at least owed her that. I explained how miserable Eliza's life was, and how she didn't deserve that. Finally, my mom agreed. So the next day, she picked me up from school and we went to Eliza's. As soon as my mom saw her, they were hugging and crying, and my mom was shocked at the shabby state of Eliza's place and immediately told her to come live with us. Oh, wow, Mom! I'm glad that we're reunited, but wasn't that decision too impulsive? What about Dad? Well, of course he was super shocked. My mom sat him down and explained who Eliza was, but he didn't take it well, and they ended up getting into a huge fight, which resulted in my dad moving out. I couldn't believe it. So, from that moment on, it was just me, my mom, and Eliza. I missed my dad so much, but it felt kind of nice to suddenly have a sister. I'd always wanted a sibling. We could hang out together, gossip, go shopping. OMG! This was going to be so much fun. But turns out it wouldn't be as fun as I'd hoped. One night, Eliza was watching a movie. I sat down next to her and said, "Oh man, I love this movie, but I can't stand the female lead. Her voice is so annoying." I turned to check on Eliza's reaction, but she stayed stiff as a board. So I continued. "In fact, she sounds just like my friend Kayla." Still no replying from Eliza. In fact, she didn't even look at me. Was she even listening? Well, clearly she was, because a few days later, my friends came over, including Kayla. And when Eliza passed us, she said, "Bet that annoying Kayla girl you told me about isn't here, right?" Oh my God. I literally froze. How could she say that right in front of everyone? In front of Kayla? I was mortified. And the worst part was that Kayla didn't want to be my friend anymore after that. Even my other friends stopped hanging out with me. They thought I was just another mean girl. And that wasn't all. Eliza started acting really weird. One day I came home from school to find her in my bedroom looking at my old photos. Then when she saw me, she said in a creepy voice, "You're so lucky you weren't abandoned like me." My God, that gave me chills. Then later that night, I overheard her asking our mom if she could get an allowance to make up for lost time. Oh, wow. But that was only fair, right? Well, the next day, I couldn't find my fave lipstick. And given that Eliza recently had unannounced visits to my room, I went to ask her. But she just shrugged and said, "Yeah, I took it. So what?" Whoa. Since when did she become so rude? Hang on, she was also wearing my floral dress. That was it. I'd had enough. I went straight to my mom and told her what Eliza had done. I expected my mom to be on my side, but she wasn't. She told me to be more understanding as Eliza wasn't used to being around other people, so she needed some time to adapt. That's ridiculous. And then it got even worse. She started to target my dad. "You should divorce him. The way he just left you like that, what an awful husband," she told my mom when the two of them were preparing dinner. "You could claim ownership of everything. You just need to prove that he's cheating on you, or that he's corrupt or something. I mean, he's a politician, so I'm sure he's doing at least one of those things." I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing. I stormed into the room and started shouting at Eliza to stop trash-talking my dad. Then I turned to Mom. "Don't listen to her poisoned lies." But Mom just sighed and replied, "Eliza isn't entirely wrong. Your dad did just leave us, and he hasn't even called. Clearly, he's having an affair." OMG, that snake was brainwashing my mom. A few days later, I saw an article that my dad was charged for corruption. How was that even possible? My dad is a good man. There must be a misunderstanding or something. Could it be something to do with Eliza? "It was you, wasn't it? You accused my dad of corruption." I stormed in and screamed at Eliza. My mom was shocked and said, "Alicia, what are you talking about?" So I told my mom that Eliza must have planned this, and my mom said, "Don't be absurd. She has nothing to gain from that. Stop speaking nonsense and apologize to Eliza." Mom, I think I know what this is about. Alicia hates me, so she's starting to make up lies about me. In fact, you should be careful that she isn't a pathological liar or something. Or maybe even worse, she could have a mental disorder. My mom then said, "You're right, sweetie. Alicia, you need help. I'm going to make a hospital appointment for you." What? Was she serious? I tried to convince her that I was fine, but she wouldn't listen. I then turned to Eliza. "You won't get away with this." The next day, my mom tried to get me to go to the hospital, but I locked my bedroom door and refused to leave. But it didn't take long for her to find the spare key, and this time she came back with some dudes next door to help hold me down. I tried my best to break free, but it was hopeless. At that exact moment, I heard my dad's voice. "Let her go." I looked up and saw my dad was with a woman. My mom looked horrified and said, "How dare you bring your mistress into our home?" But my dad said, "It's not what it looks like, honey. This is Eliza, the real Eliza. That woman over there is an imposter. Her real name is Kim." OMG! I knew something was wrong with her. You might be wondering why my dad suddenly appeared. Well, I called him the day before and asked him to investigate Eliza, as I had a feeling there was something fishy going on. He went to the orphanage to get more info, and the sisters there kept saying Eliza was the sweetest woman, and that if he waited, he could meet her. Well, then the real Eliza turned up, and that's when my dad found out the truth. Turns out Kim was once Eliza's roommate. Eliza had moved out, but the sisters at the orphanage didn't know this, so they still gave me the old address. Eliza knew about my mom the whole time as she'd found the letters, but she was still mad about being abandoned, so wasn't ready to meet her. She told Kim everything about my family and how wealthy we were, so when I went by the old address and asked about Eliza, Kim seized the opportunity to steal Eliza's identity. My dad pointed at Kim and said, "I'll give you 10 seconds to get out of my house or I'll call the police. Don't you ever come near my family again." Kim fled immediately, and we never saw her again. As for the real Eliza, well, that was quite the reunion. At first it didn't go well, but gradually Eliza opened up to my mom, and of course my dad's corruption charges were dropped after he was found innocent. He also forgave my mom and moved back in. Eliza visits us often, and I have to say, it's exactly what I hoped having a big sister would feel like. I'm so glad we're all reunited now.
I was sitting in the reception with an ice pack pressed to my head, waiting for my mom to come pick me up. Ugh, that stupid rogue ball during PE! Oh, there she was, glamorous as always. She rushed over and hugged me, checking if I was okay. Then she guided me out of there and along the hallway. A group of teenage boys stopped dead and stared open-mouthed as we walked by. One even wolf whistled. Even my math teacher, who was walking out of his classroom, started readjusting his tie and waved over at us. No, those reactions weren't for me. They were for my mom. She's just too beautiful to ever be fazed by how men act around her. On the way back home, I got a message from my bestie, Minnie. "I bet men would all compete to win a date with your mom. She was like a goddess earlier." I giggled to myself. The thought of a bunch of adult men competing to win my mom's affection amused me. I couldn't understand why my mom was still single. She's gorgeous, successful, and a really kind person. And I guessed she'd enjoy having a man about the place, right? Okay, so Minnie wasn't being serious, but the more I pondered on it, the better the idea became. So I messaged her back. "Tell me more about that contest idea of yours." Then one time, when my mom was away on a business trip, I invited Minnie around. We spent all evening posting about the auditions online and handing flyers out around town. Soon, the applications came flooding in. Oh boy, some were handsome, but some, yeah, they were so not. Delete, definitely. We got everything ready to spend hours sifting through all the applicants. Gotta be strict, 'cause the chosen one had to be perfect like Prince Paris to match with a woman like my mom, whose name is actually Helen. Finally, we whittled them down to a top 10 list, and we invited them along to round 1. Fitness is important, right? Well, at least that's what Minnie says. So we set up an assault course at the local park. All the guys showed up, including Mr. Swanson, my gym teacher. Uh-oh, awkward. But hey, I suppose he was good-looking and a physically strong man. Firstly, they had to run a complete lap of the field, as stamina was important. Then they had to lift 120 pounds of weights, equal to my mom's weight. She sure needed a man who could lift her over their shoulder like they do in the movies. OMG. Watching them warming up was hilarious. One man showed up in this Lycra one-piece and started doing jumping jacks, and another guy was doing some weird karate moves. All of them completed the running section. Well, just about. But some of them struggled to lift the weights, including Mr. Swanson, who had turned bright red and was groaning. Minnie and I covered our mouths to hold back our laughs. Farewell, Mr. Swanson. That was for being mean to us in gym class. Finishing round 1, we eliminated 3 men. Too bad, as they were handsome. On to round 2. It's not all about brawn. Brains are important too. That was why Minnie and I spent 2 days noting down all the questions for our Who Wants to Be My Mom's Boyfriend quiz round. My mom deserves a man who knows everything. We set out a row of kid-sized chairs in the backyard. Then we walked along the line and fired questions at them. Suddenly, one man stood up and furiously said to the others, "Why are we letting some kids test us like this?" Then stormed off. Minnie whispered, "Not surprising, really." I saw him scratching his head at the other questions. We then eliminated those with the lowest score, leaving just 5 potentials to go through to round 3. That night, I was about to grab something to eat, and I saw my mom standing in the kitchen. She was back earlier than I thought. She was looking down at the pile of profiles on the table with in and out stamps on them. Confused, she asked me, "Zara, what is the meaning of this?" "Mom, we think you've been lonely for a long time, so Minnie and I are doing a contest to find you a man." I gave my best puppy-eyed look. "Actually, tomorrow is round 3. It'd be perfect if you could join us for the interview. Please?" Mom glared at me and shook her head. But I kept insisting until she sighed and said, "Fine, I'll come." I howled with joy and hugged her. Bring on round 3, the interview stage. Minnie and I asked the questions while Mom, Queen Helen, watched from her throne. The first one, Tyler, waved over at Mom and said, "Helen, do you recognize me?" My mom just smiled politely. Turned out, Tyler had a big crush on my mom since they were both in high school. Then when Minnie asked him to show us his talent, he ignored her and said to Mom, "Oh, Helen, I've never stopped loving you. You remember back then when we—" I shouted out, interrupting him. "Not impressive enough. Next!" The second one stepped in. Simon. Ooh, he was wearing a suit and seemed like a gentleman. "Maybe you don't recognize me," Simon spoke up. My mom's smile disappeared. "I'm Simon, the head of the engineering department in our company." Simon must have had a crush on my mom for a long time, but she sure didn't even know he existed. His talent performance was to help fix 2 faulty computers in my house. Useful, but honestly, it wasn't rocking enough. Plus, him being my mom's colleague was awkward. Duh! As soon as the third one, James, walked in, Mom sat up with a surprise. "Helen, I miss you so much," he sincerely said. Mom immediately motioned me to eliminate him, then got up and went inside. It was revealed that James was her ex-boyfriend from their college days. Okay, creep. Oh well, 2 guys left. The next one was so dreamy. He looked like he belonged in a boy band. Minnie and I clasped hands excitedly. "Hi, I'm Daniel. Nice to meet you, ladies." Daniel's smile totally melted Minnie and I. "I don't know if you ladies know, but I live on this street." Seriously? How did I not know a handsome neighbor like this? He then took out his guitar and played a song. OMG, this guy deserves straight A's. But he was only 21 years old. That was way younger than my mom. Andy was the last one of all. Very handsome and sweet. For his talent, he'd make us cupcakes. "These lovely little ones are specially made for you, lovely ladies." He smiled. Oh, how charming! In the end, Minnie and I sat together and discussed our options. Well, the result was quite obvious. I excitedly announced, "We've made our decision. My new daddy, the chosen Prince Paris to my mom Helen, the champion is Andy!" He looked chuffed and grinned over at my mom. Still, my mom maintained that polite smile and remained silent. Yay! This was great! I finally had a father. Moreover, this one makes awesome food. I couldn't wait for their first date. Eek! Now let me tell you, the date went amazingly. Andy took my mom and I to this fancy restaurant in town. He pulled the chairs out for us, ordered food he thought we'd like. Then he started serving us the coolest stories ever. He really is a gentleman. If I had a boyfriend, I would want one like him. After we finished, I crossed the street to buy ice cream and caught them hugging. Perfect! Looked like things went well. Oh, Andy! I could already imagine the life where he was family. That night, Mom sat down next to me while I was texting and watching TV. "Zara, I'm glad to see you had fun these past few days." I hummed, still texting. But did it ever cross your mind that what you did was for you and not for me? Excuse me? I worked hard to make her happy, and she could say that to me? I took my eyes off the phone and stared at her. Sweetie, you only picked the man you liked the best. It's your choice, not mine. I appreciate what you did, but relationships are not that simple. I tearfully raised my phone and shook it, saying that I already invited Andy over at the weekend to teach me how to cook. Mom smiled. No problem. Andy and I already talked and decided to stay friends. So this weekend's plan remains the same. I lowered my head and apologized to her. Mom was right. I'd picked my favorite without considering her feelings. But yeah, it wasn't all bad, as after that, Andy kept coming over most weekends, took me to go buy groceries with him, and then cooked for us. He taught me how to cook and bake, and we even chatted about the goofy boys at my school. Seriously, if that Richard wants a chance with a pretty girl like ours, Zara, then he should be stronger, Andy said, while his hands were still cooking gracefully. Yeah, Richard. Burn! Speaking of being burnt, ouch! Yes, it was me who had just burnt myself in the oven thinking about all this. Andy rushed over, guided my hand over to the faucet, and ran it under cold water. Oh, geez. He was so caring and thoughtful. Unlike those childish guys my age. Soon it was my sweet 16th, and of course, Andy was the chef for dinner. Mom and Minnie just had to light up the birthday candles. Then, as I watched Andy through the candlelight, I knew I couldn't lie to myself anymore. I was in love with him. I spent days planning for the best confession to him. Only, before I could tell him how I felt, Mom told me, Andy just called me and said he'd been offered the head chef job in New York. He's leaving next week. What? No! Why? It was Andy, the first love of my life. That was so unfair. We didn't get any chance to see him until the day he boarded. Mom and I went to the airport to see him off. I couldn't bear watching him go, so I glued my eyes on the floor while he was still excitedly chatting with my mom. Zara, use what I taught you to take good care of your mother, okay? Andy winked and patted my head. I couldn't help myself any longer. I burst into tears, hugged him, and sobbed out, Andy, I love you. Please don't go. Don't leave me. I can't live without you. For a moment, the whole airport, including my mom, was stunned. All eyes were on me. Andy immediately pushed me away, clearing his throat, and said, Zara, you're a lovely, pretty, sweet girl. You will find a suitable boyfriend. Then he turned to Mom. Best wishes to you both. Bye, Helen. Bye, Zara. And I watched him walk away with tears streaming down on my face. Well, it's been 6 months since then, and I eventually realized that my feelings for Andy were just a teenage confusion. I did love him, yes, but it was more like admiring and respecting him as a father figure. Anyway, I do have a new dad now, but it was my beloved Mom's choice. His name is Harris, and he might not be as good a cook as Andy, but he's a nice guy, and he makes her happy. And of course, we still keep in touch with Andy. Both his career and his love life are doing really well in the Big Apple. I've learned my lesson. Life's full of choices, some good and some not so good. But sometimes, however much we want to, we can't make choices for other people. Instead, we just have to take a deep breath and let them make their own. High school has started, and it's going pretty well. I'm currently seeing this very cute guy in math class. Guys my age are not that bad, to be honest. Minnie's not so bad on herself either, as she's now dating that musician Daniel and enjoys touring around with him whenever he plays at concerts. What a happily fulfilled ending for everyone, isn't it?
Not to brag, but these are really tasty. I bet even Grace, my picky sister, would finish this whole thing in one sitting. My cooking abilities were definitely up there with Michelin star chefs. I took another bite out of a fajita when I heard noises coming from the living room. Ah, Grace must be back. There she was, sprawled out on the couch, surrounded by her handbag, heels, jacket, and other stuff. Grace, we've talked about this. I can't keep on tidying up after you. I have studying to do, I said as I picked up her things. Suddenly, Grace sat up, rested her head in her hands, then looked at me with sad eyes. An uneasy feeling welled up in my heart. Oh no, what was wrong? She sighed, and as she glumly stared at the floor, she said, "Easton, pack your things. We're moving out tomorrow." What? Again? I couldn't contain my shock. Why, Grace? Do you owe someone money again? Grace didn't answer, so I worriedly asked, "How much do you owe this time?" $7,000, she mumbled. What? $7,000? That's crazy. What did you borrow so much money for? I plopped down on the sofa in disbelief. I sat there, frantically wondering how to deal with Grace's enormous debt. Her extravagant spending habits had started after our parents passed away. I guess she was trying to numb out her grief with the latest must-have outfit. Then suddenly, she burst out laughing. Come on, bro, I'm just kidding. Huh? I gaped at her. Grace, it's not funny. For an instance there, I actually thought we'd have to elope or something. She grinned at me. If there's no debt, then why are we moving again? I followed her as she walked out of the room, took a piece of fajita and popped it in her mouth. Then she began to tell me everything. Turns out she'd found herself a sugar daddy fiancé, and we were moving in with him. I frowned at her. So what, now you're marrying some granddad? Why do you... Without letting me finish my sentence, Grace tapped my head with her knuckle. Do you seriously think a beautiful and famous model like me would marry some old man? Yet, even as a famous model, you still can't afford all of your branded goods. Then you have to keep on moving house all the time to avoid the debt collectors. I winked at Grace. She was about to hit me on the head again, but I dodged it. Ha! The next morning, there was a knock at the door, so I opened it to find a good-looking man in his mid-40s standing there. Ah, turns out he's Owen, my future brother-in-law. Before I had a chance to say anything, Grace tottered over in her heels and wrapped her arms around his neck. Honey, why are you so late? I'm so nervous. Smiling, Owen said, Darling, there's nothing to worry about. Everything's ready to welcome you and Easton. They continued coddling each other, so I quickly walked away. Seeing them like that gave me goosebumps. Ugh, cheesy. Owen drove us to his house. Well, I say house, but it was more like a royal palace. Inside there was a classic design to the place, with a luxurious style. I spotted a girl about my age sitting on the couch. Her arms were folded and she had a disgruntled look on her face. Owen looked at her and said, Vivian, why are you still sitting there? Come and welcome your stepmom and uncle. Vivian smirked and coldly replied, No thanks. I'm not in the market for a new stepmom, especially one who's barely out of high school. Then she stormed off, slamming the door behind her. Oh no, she hates me. Does she? Seeing Grace look worried, Owen, though obviously a little angry, still tried to reassure her. It's okay, she's just being a typical teenager. Give her a few days and I'm sure she'll be fine. As for me, I was I had to admit that I was very nervous. Vivian's sharp-eyed look had made me feel uncomfortable. I mean, I think a tank full of sharks would have been more welcoming than her. Looks like my new home life wouldn't be easy. The next morning, while I was helping Grace take some pictures of her posing in the living room, for the gram, she suddenly yelled so loud that I had almost dropped the phone. Hey, take that dog out right now! Hurry up! I turned around and saw Vivian walking what looked like a white cloud across the room. Seeing that, I ran toward her and said, Vivian, please take it outside, as Grace is allergic to dog fur. Vivian rolled her eyes and replied, This is my home, and this is my dog. Then she smirked as she let go of the dog lead. Oops! Her fluffy cloud dog immediately ran over to Grace and started barking at her. Grace yelped out, grabbed the pillow, then tried using it as a shield as she continued to scream at the dog to go away. At that moment, Owen appeared from upstairs, and with an angry look on his face, he snapped at her. Vivian, get Teddy out of here right now. No, it's them who should leave, she argued. while her dog barked so hard that Grace huddled up tighter in the corner of the couch and cried nonstop. Vivian, you've been warned. If you do it again, then I'll have no choice but to find Teddy a new home. Owen shouted loudly. Vivian huffed out, then gave Grace a fierce look as she picked up the dog and walked off. Man, it was true that life here wasn't easy at all, and it was about to get a lot harder. The next day, I was rearranging my new room when I heard a loud noise coming from downstairs. I went to check it out and found Grace instructing two maids on where to hang a giant print from one of her modeling photo shoots, and laying on the ground was the picture of Vivian with Owen and her mom. Move a little right? No, a little left. Okay, Grace ordered them. I hurried over to her and asked, what are you doing? She smiled. I'm just making a few decor adjustments. It looks far more luxurious now, don't you think? Then she picked a gray vase off the table and threw it into the trash can, then placed a double swan figurine in its place. Now that's much better, she rubbed her hands together. God, I know Grace was just trying to claim her position as host, but even so, she shouldn't have taken down the picture of Vivian's mom. If she knew. At that moment, a scream interrupted my train of thought. Vivian's. Sigh. I knew it. Grace, how dare you? Vivian blushed with anger. Then Grace interrupted her. This is my house too, and I have the right to put my mark on it. It makes the room look far more modern. No, you have no right. Take down that disgusting picture and put the old one back. This is my house, and your father will soon be my husband. So I can do what I please. So stop your childish strops and just accept it. Vivian resentfully picked up the family picture, then quietly took it up to her room. As a witness to it all, I have to be honest, I thought Grace was being outrageous. After all, Vivian's mother passed away not too long ago, so it was only natural to not accept the stepmother, right? But now Grace was messing things up and seemed to want to delete all of the images of Vivian's mother in this house. That wasn't cool. That evening I was reading The Theory of Everything in the garden when I felt a pat on my shoulder. I looked up to see Owen. Easton, I'm just letting you know that schools are all set up for you. You start next week. Then he added, you don't have a car yet, do you? I shall ask Vivian to give you a lift. You're in the same class anyway. Wait, what? I was actually going to the most prestigious and expensive school in the area? That's a dream come true, but I heard that all the other kids that went there were rich and influential. Could a poor guy like me adapt to the luxurious environment there? A feeling of uneasiness suddenly welled up in my heart, but then I told myself that everything would be fine. Monday morning arrived and I made sure I was ready early. I lingered around in the kitchen waiting for Vivian, but 30 minutes later, and she still hadn't appeared. I started to panic, as I didn't want to be late on my first day. That was the type of bad first impression that would stick. I was about to walk to the bus stop when I saw Vivian slowly coming down the stairs. She winced at me and said, "Oh, you're still here. I suppose you want to come with me then?" I didn't answer and just followed her to the car. As soon as I sat down, she sped away. I hadn't even fastened my seatbelt yet, which I then tried to do in a fumbled panic. Every time she pressed down on the accelerator, my heart skipped a beat. Then after some hellish 10 minutes, she stopped the car. Whew! I was still alive. But hang on, this wasn't school. I turned to Vivian and stammered to ask her, but she cut me off. Get out of my car, and if you dare tell anyone how you know me, you will pay. Then she raised her fist to my face. Wow, she didn't have to be that aggressive. But fine, anyway. I didn't want to have anything to do with her either. As I briskly walked to school, I found myself worrying that this would be like it was in the movies, and I'd be teased for being the newbie. The school came into view, and damn, it was even more spectacular in real life. I took a deep breath to muster up the courage to enter the school. The grandeur and beauty of the place was so overwhelming. I was used to graffiti-covered desks and a jam locker door. Not here. Even the restroom door signs were expensive looking. I was wandering aimlessly trying to find my classroom when suddenly, I saw this girl walk ahead and drop something. I picked it up and called after her. Sorry, is this yours? The girl turned around, then squeaked out, "Oh my God, thank you. You're my knight in shining armor. I can't live without my glossy lipstick." Then she started doing this odd pose. Then she pouted and flicked out her hair. Was this a rich girl thing? It was very confusing, but hey, I guess she seemed nice. I smiled at her, then turned to walk away. That's when I noticed the groups of girls in the corridor. They were all staring at me, and one of them even winked. Then I overheard some of them talking about me. One of them said, "Ooh, he's cute." And another said, "It's about time we had a new hot boy in this school." Well, girls from rich schools were weird. I know I'm quite a good-looking guy, but I'd never had girls act like this toward me before. I chuckled inwardly and went to find my class. It seemed inevitable that my school life was destined to be rather, interesting. Finally, I'm out of that morbid place. Now let me tell you, sharing a cell with a dozen other noisy, stinky, grumpy dudes ain't fun. Anyway, here I am, free as a bird now. So no one's here to pick me up. Suppose I'd have to call Mom. It took me a few seconds to familiarize myself with my phone. Jeez, it'd been 4 years. It was a miracle I hadn't turned into one of those leg-cradling crazy dudes. How I ended up in there in the first place was a joke. All I did was take some stuff from 1 or 2 warehouses and sell them on. No big deal. "Yo, Mom, it's your boy Cole. I'm out, and yeah, I need a lift home." I spoke the moment I heard Mom's voice. "Cole, Do you have any idea what hell your actions have put your mother through?" My dad was so good at overreacting, but I needed somewhere to stay, so I could handle him. "But Dad, Mom, come on, I'm still your son. You have the heart to see me homeless and sleeping next to rats?" There was a brief pause. Then Dad grunted, "You can stay for a few weeks, but only for your mother's sake." "Thanks, Dad. You're the man." Bingo. My parents were like putty in my hands. This was the life. I played video games all day, then partied all night. Then one night, I was getting ready to meet my friend Moose, when Mom told me that the pizza delivery guy was at the door. I shouted down to her, "You can shout me this one, and I'll get the next." I finished getting ready, and I must say, I was looking smooth. I strode down into the kitchen and grabbed a slice of pizza. Dad was sitting there glaring at me over his report. "If you can't afford to pay for items, then I suggest you don't order them." He looked at the pizza slice in my hand. Mom walked up behind him and placed her hands on his shoulders. "Darling, give him some more time. He's still adjusting to outside life." "Thanks, Mom. You're the greatest." I gave her a greasy pizza kiss on the cheek. Any chance you can lend me some dough?" Dad shook his head and sighed, while Mom went over to her purse and passed me some money. Hey, there'd be plenty of time to get a job and be responsible. Right now, I had 4 years of lost time to make up for. Once, I borrowed Dad's car. I swear I only had a couple of beers, but the world glitched out and went all blurry. The next thing I know, I'd driven straight into the neighbor's front yard. Oops. I opened my eyes the next morning to a killer headache, so all I wanted was some black coffee and a plate full of bacon. But I got Dad's death stare instead. "Just when I think you can't get any more irresponsible, you took my car without asking, drank too much, then drove into Gloria's beloved rose bushes." "Chill out, Dad. I'll fix it later," I said as I raided the fridge for food. "You're not the one having to pay for the damages. We've made our decision. You have 1 week to get out of our house." Now hold up. I had 0 places to go. I couldn't stay with Moose, as he was crashing in his sister's garage, and I didn't know anyone else. How could they? I gotta chill a bit, so I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through dating apps. Then I matched with this stunning blonde called Trudy. She's a little older than me, but her family is rolling in dough, and also, she has her own business. Not only that, but she's hotter than an agitated dragon. So yeah, her photos seemed a little grainy, but guess the retro trend was in. Looks like I had it both ways, love and money. I have quite a face, but since I love beer and pizza, and without any dedication for the gym, I don't have the perfect body. But I needed to keep this girl interested. So I told her I was a tall dude with an impressive six-pack, who just graduated and was on the lookout for a girl with brains as well as beauty. This girl was actually pretty easy to talk to. She sent me pictures of her latest purchases, like phones, expensive watches, and designer clothes, along with the promise that when we started dating in person, she'd buy me whatever I wanted. Result: after 4 days of face pics and my priceless conversation, Trudy was smitten, and she sent me a message saying, "Cole, I haven't known you long, but I know how I feel. I love you. X." Okay, that's really fast, but yeah, I've won the lottery over here. Hey, maybe she lied about her look too, but it didn't matter. She's rich. So I replied to her, "I know, babes. I feel it too. X." We immediately arranged to meet in person and decided on a yellow dress code. I looked around the park trying to spot this gold mine, but all I could see was some old lady in a yellow dress. Okay, coincident, but why is she heading my way? The closer she got toward me, the wider her grin was. "Cole, right? It's me, Trudy." What? No. How come this corny, overweight, wrinkly old lady be Trudy? I was expecting the blonde beauty from the photos, not Big Bird. Once I got over the initial shock, we sat down and talked. Turns out my dream girl was in her 50s. All the descriptions and photos of her were true, but 30 years ago. She was clearly in the middle of a midlife crisis or something. "You're not the same either," she sneered. "You're barely taller than me. And where's the gym body?" All right, fair enough. I fake smiled. "Yeah, despite you looking different, I still find you very beautiful." That night, I tossed and turned. This was all so unexpected. Trudy was totally not my type. But dating her might not hurt. She was rich. And also, I had to move out tomorrow. So at least she'd pay for me. With that, I sent her a message. "Babe, you're beautiful, and I want to make us official. X." The next day, I moved in with Trudy. Now, let me tell you something. Her apartment was lavish. It was full of the latest tech. Crazy. Seeing as she was so old, she probably didn't know how to use them. She worked a lot, so most of the time I was home alone. And I was free to watch cartoons and movies, munch on potato chips, and play as many video games as I felt like. One time, I was watching a movie when the door opened. And in stepped this glary-eyed dude. I shouted at him, "Hey dude, you have the wrong apartment." He tutted and said, "I can assure you that I don't. I'm Alex, Trudy's son, and you must be Cole. I would say it's a pleasure to meet my mother's gold-digging boyfriend in the flesh, but unfortunately, it's not." What? Trudy has a son? And by the looks, he's even older than me. And how dare he called me a gold digger? I suppose I was, but still, he had no right to call me it. Even worse, he refused to leave. He just sat in the kitchen and waited for his mom to return. Then he had a heated argument with her in which he referred to me as a loser and a bum. Things weren't any better with my parents either. Dad told me to be independent and get a real job, not a sugar mama. And Mom was just crying. Whatever. This was their fault for kicking me out in the first place. What did they expect me to do? Live under a bridge? Few days after I met Alex, Trudy insisted on dragging me along to his lame work launch thing. As soon as I got there, I went straight to the food. I was stuffing a mini quiche into my mouth when this girl walked up alongside me and said, "Great minds think alike." I gave her a gormless look. Then she pointed at the food. We both headed straight for the food. I laughed at that. This girl was funny. And hot. Really hot. Her name is Beatrice, and she works for that loser Alex. After that, I started seeing a lot more of this Beatrice girl, as she often popped over with Alex. And while he was arguing with his mom, usually about me, I chatted to her. That was how I found out she wasn't having it easy either. She was behind on her rent because her truant brother had stolen the money and spent it all. I felt bad for her, so I took the envelope full of cash that Trudy had given to me, and I handed it to her. Okay, so I wouldn't be able to buy anything new for a few weeks, but it was worth it just to know that she'd be okay. Truth was, I was really falling for Beatrice, but I couldn't do anything about it, as I was with Trudy, and I was relying on her handouts. Soon, things became stinky. I came out of the shower to see Trudy standing there with my phone in her hand. "How could you?" She threw it at me. Yeah, so she'd read all of the messages I'd sent to Moose, saying how I didn't find her remotely attractive and I was only with her for a free ride. Trudes, my babes, come on, those messages were just me joking. I laughed. I was just messing around. Shut up, you liar! You find me hideous. Alex was right. You were only using me for my money. And worse, you never went to college. Instead, you were in jail. I was about to lay on the cold charm when Alex and Beatrice bursted into the room. Alex shouted at me, "How lowlife you are. What a shameless gold digger." It's appalling. I've told her to report you to the cops. Beatrice interrupted. No, don't do that. What Cole did was wrong, but he's not all that bad. Please. I was so moved. Took a look around. Trudy was crying. Alex was so furious his eyes were bulging. And Beatrice, well, she just looked disappointed. I then packed my stuff and left in shame. Well, that was a few months ago, and I have a decent job now. Even though I live back at home, I pay my way, and I'm saving up to put a deposit down on my own place. I never should have used Trudy like that. She might be old, but she still has feelings, and the way I treated her wasn't right. I was undeniably a douchebag back then. All I want is to have a happy life with Beatrice. I really love her, which is why I asked her to be my girlfriend, but she rejected me. Man, it stung, but I'm not giving up. Perhaps she might give me a chance once she sees I've changed. I can't fix the past. All I can do now is improve myself and keep on rolling forward.
I was standing outside of college chatting to my friends when suddenly a police car pulled up, and from the car's window, a handsome police officer waved at me, then told me to hurry up. I excitedly waved back at him, said goodbye to my friends, and rushed to him in front of their admiring eyes. So, I'm Daisy, and the handsome cop is Levi, my amazing, brave boyfriend. We first met at the library in town. I was there for my studies, and he was looking for some crime books. We started dating, and now a year later, we're madly in love. There are so many things that I love about dating a cop, such as seeing him in his uniform. It never fails to make me beam with pride. And I'm not gonna lie, he has abs of steel due to all of his workouts. Swoon! Besides, he has the cutest quirky habits. Like, when we go to a restaurant or the theater, he always scans it first to check if it's safe. But as good as being with him is, there are a few bum points, such as his unpredictable work schedule. Day, night, weekends, you name it, he works it. Then, when we finally managed to plan something, he sometimes got an emergency phone call and had to bail on me. This sucked, especially when it was my sister's wedding. But without a doubt, the most annoying thing of all is his popularity with other girls. They're like moths to a flame around him, especially this one colleague of his, Ellie. One time, Levi brought his colleague Brad over while I was there studying. I heard Brad remark, "Levi, I never thought you'd end up with a bookworm. I thought you'd end up with Ellie. Everyone can see you two have a strong connection." Levi tried laughing it off and saying that it was nonsense, but the jealousy rose up in me. By the time Brad left, I was really upset about it, so I packed up my books and went to leave. He stopped me and asked me what was wrong. Trying my best not to cry, I blurted out, "Why aren't you with Ellie? You spend all your time with her." He shook his head, smirked, then said, "Ignore Brad. He's a joker. And yeah, I spend time with Ellie. I work with her. But it's you I love, and everyone knows it. In fact, why don't you move in? Then we can spend more time together." My sadness was soon overlapped by happiness, and I jumped into his arms and squealed out, "Really? Yes, for sure!" This was so exciting. I moved in a few weeks later, and at first, living with Levi was the best thing ever. But over time, there were little niggling things that started to play on my mind. For example, one day I was chatting to the new neighbor when Levi arrived home and in a stone-cold voice demanded I go inside. Then he sternly told me never to talk to strangers. But come on, I'm a naturally chatty, friendly girl who loves talking to people and making new friends. I don't know, I guess it was me overreacting? I mean, he was just looking out for me, right? But then, his need for control worsened when once, I arranged to meet my friends in town. Levi was going to come too, but then he had a last-minute work call and couldn't. When I said I'd just get a taxi, he freaked out and told me I couldn't go. After I got upset about it, he reluctantly agreed to let me go. He called a reputable taxi firm to pick me up, then told me I had to be back by 10 p.m. But after a few drinks, I lost all sense of time. I was just having too much fun. I was dancing with my friend when Levi stormed in, grabbed my arm, and pulled me out of there. Everyone was staring at us, not helped because he was in his cop uniform. I even heard one man tut out, "It's always the innocent-looking ones, isn't it?" It was so embarrassing. At home, I sat there brooding while he got me a glass of water. When he tried passing it to me, I jumped up to my feet and screamed at him, "You're being ridiculous! And thanks to you, everyone in the bar thinks I'm some sort of criminal. I don't need a curfew." "It's not like that," he sighed. But I was so upset, I brushed past him and slammed the bedroom door behind me. I cried myself to sleep. I hated arguing with him. I gave him silent treatment throughout the next day. But then in the evening, he arrived home with a gift box and apologized for making me sad. That was so sweet. I gave him a hug and said, "I'm sorry too." Then I opened the box. It was a really lovely watch. I noticed that it had an extra button on it, but I didn't think much of it. I stared down at it admirably as he fixed it on my wrist. That's how caring my boyfriend was. So I decided to buy him something too. The next day after college, I went to the mall. Suddenly, Levi called me and asked me where I was. I wanted the gift to be a surprise, so I told him I was at home. Crossly, he said, "Daisy, don't lie to me. I know you're at High Hill Shopping Mall. Come home at once." Huh? How did he know that? I gave up on finding a gift and went home. When he got back, I asked him how he knew where I was, and I saw him briefly glance at my watch. Then, he admitted that he had GPS fitted to it, but it was only so he could keep me safe. What? I wasn't a kid anymore. How could he use it to follow me? We had a huge fight, and I told him he was controlling and crazy, and he needed to stop treating me like a little kid. Then I shut myself away in the bedroom. The next day, when I woke up, Levi had already left for work. I was so wound up, so I decided to go for a jog to clear my head. Obviously, I left the watch at home, and also my phone. When I got back, I was about to head for the shower when I heard my phone ringing. It was Levi. Then I noticed that I had 50 missed calls and a ton of messages from him. What? This wasn't normal. I'd only been gone for an hour at the most. Anyways, I put the watch back on, then suddenly the door banged open and Levi stormed in, and he yelled at me, "Are you okay? Where did you go? Why didn't you answer my calls?" This sucked, as I love him, but I knew I couldn't live like this anymore. So I told him I needed my freedom, then headed for the door. He looked so mad as he grabbed my hand, pulled me into the upstairs room, then locked me inside. I banged on the door and pleaded with him to let me out. "Daisy, trust me. This is for your own good. You're not safe out there." Then I heard his footsteps trail off and knew he'd left. I curled up into a ball and cried myself to sleep. When I woke up, it was getting pretty dark out there. I searched the room for something to help me and found a rope ladder. The perks of living with a prepared cop. I used it to climb out of the window, but as soon as I reached the ground, 2 men appeared. Then suddenly, the world turned black. When I opened my eyes, I realized that I was in a dark, damp room and I was tied up. The 2 men were sitting by the door and talking to each other. I began to panic. I'd seen enough movies to know that this was bad. One of the men looked over at me, and I quickly closed my eyes. But it was too late. He'd seen I was awake, so he walked over and said, Welcome back, sweetheart. Panicked, I asked, "Who are you? Why me?" He sniggered out, "Ah, yes. If only that boyfriend of yours was here. Then we could ask him." Then he picked up his phone, and seconds later, I heard Levi's voice in the other line. "Hello? Remember me? We seem to have something of yours." I heard the fear in Levi's voice. "Let her go! Your wife's death wasn't her fault. It's your fault she's dead. Now it's your turn to lose the woman you love. Come here alone if you want to see her face again. And don't even think about calling for backup." He hung up the phone, then peered down at me before he kicked the empty barrel next to me. I jolted back, and he laughed. It was terrifying. Not long after that, they dragged a beaten-up man into the room. "Levi! Oh no!" Levi managed to look at me, forced a smile, and slurred out, "My flower girl. Don't worry, I'm here now." The gang laughed at this. Then he stopped in front of Levi and said, "I think you and me need a little chat. Let's call it man business." I knew I needed to find a way to help him. But what? That's when I looked down at my watch. It already had GPS, so perhaps the extra button did something. I struggled to press it, which wasn't easy with roped hands, trust me. But eventually, I managed to. By this point, Levi was unconscious, and I started sobbing. I didn't want to lose him. Not like this. The one man set something up next to him. "Oh no, it was a bomb!" He sneered out. "You have 30 minutes left to say goodbye to your lover, boy." Then the man left. I called Levi's name and sobbed out how I loved him. I honestly thought we were both going to die there. And watching the timer count down to our doom was the worst feeling ever. Suddenly, the door burst open. At first, I thought it was those men back again. But instead, Brad and his team rushed over, saw the bomb, then quickly got both me and Levi out of there. I was pushed to the ground just before there was a big bang, and the house exploded. On the way to the hospital, Ellie explained everything to me. So, turns out this involved a difficult criminal case that happened last year. Levi had been investigating a group of drug dealers, but an incident happened, and the gang's leader's wife accidentally fell from the building and died. They arrested most of the dealers, but some got away, including the gang leader. Then recently, Levi had received images of me outside college and our house from them, and took this as a threat to my safety. Well, that explained all of Levi's controlling and weird behavior. I felt so bad for misjudging Levi. He was the sweetest, bravest man, and I loved him so much. I stayed by his side as he recovered in hospital. Then one day, he finally opened his eyes, looked at me, and muttered out, "There's my flower girl." I hugged him, gently, of course. It was such a relief to know he was going to be okay. The gang is still out there somewhere, but hopefully they'll catch them soon. I do worry about it, but it's okay, as I know I have Levi to protect me. After all, he's my real-life action hero, and I know that with him by my side, we'll get through anything.
Oh no, I'd just covered my childhood friend Kevin in coffee, but I'm currently Liana, so he didn't recognize me, as he only knew me as Kai. Confused? Then you should check out parts 1 and 2 first. I frantically apologized to Kevin while looking around for some napkins to soak the coffee up. "It's fine," he smiled. I smiled back at him. Yep, he was the same kind, sweet Kevin. Suddenly I heard Diamond's voice. "Liana, what have you done?" Then she appeared next to Kevin and gently touched his arm. "I apologize. She's new." "It's okay. It was my fault anyway. I wasn't looking where I was going." "That's just typical of you, always taking the blame." She gave him this starry-eyed look. "Oh, so you two already know each other?" I thought out loud. Yes, Kevin and I went to college together in Oz. I introduced him to Father for this project, as I believe he'll be an asset to it. Now run along and make some fresh coffees. Diamond gave me a stare. As I went off to make coffees, again, I wondered about Diamond. Did she like Kevin? Oh, no, that manipulative girl doesn't deserve such a sweet guy like him. Later that day, we had a meeting where my dad introduced Kevin as the leader of the project. Kevin then thanked him and started talking about his visions for this project. And it was so obvious how all the girls in the room couldn't take their eyes off him, including Diamond. Ugh. The next day after work, I followed Kevin out to the parking lot and shouted his name. When he turned and saw me, he smiled, and I instantly felt warm inside. I have something for you, as, an apology for ruining your last one. I passed him a new shirt. I hope I guessed your size right. Thanks, you really didn't have to do this. He looked flattered as he took it from me. Yep, you have the size spot on. Impressive. His comment caused me to smile to myself. Living as a boy for years at least gave me a perk of understanding their sizes. I waved him goodbye and started to walk off, but he shouted, Wait, is there any chance I could have your number? You bet. I was blushing so hard by then. And after that, we started messaging each other, and every time my phone buzzed with his name, I found myself doing this gummy smile. Unfortunately, I couldn't stay in my love bubble with Kevin forever. Instead, I had to spend my days being bossed around by Diamond. Ugh. Once, she was ordering me to revise a report I'd already redone twice. Suddenly, Kevin walked over, picked up the report, and said, Oh, this one. You've done a good job with it, Liana. No need to change anything. Diamond looked furious at being undermined, and I couldn't hide my smug look. Take that, little Miss Bossy. After she left, I thanked him for helping me out. It's fine. Hey, don't take much notice of Diamond. She's just intent on impressing her father. If she causes you any more problems, just come find me, okay? Oh, what a sweet guy he was. But one afternoon, I walked into the office kitchen to make myself a drink and saw Diamond and Kevin having a serious chat. On seeing me, Diamond said to him, I'm sorry, Kevin. You needed to know the truth. Then she gave me a snooty look as she passed me. I wonder what that was about. I was going to ask him, but before I could, he just left without so much as a glance in my direction. Okay, that was weird, but maybe he was just busy, right? That evening, I messaged Kevin and asked him if he wanted to go for a jog in the park. He agreed, but when he showed up, he could barely meet my eye. Kevin, what's wrong? He was silent for a moment, then shouted, Why? Why did you lie to me? Diamond told me how you're engaged to Kai. Why did you lead me on? I sputtered out, but he just tutted, then walked off. I stood there speechless and wondering how I was going to get out of this mess. If this wasn't bad enough, as I was on my way home, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Diamond. Leave the house and the company by tomorrow, else I'm telling Kai the truth. Of course, I just ghosted her dumb message, and true to her word, the next day, my Kai phone went off. It was Diamond telling me how Liana was cheating on me. It was crystal clear she wasn't going to drop this. Some days later, my father asked me to go to dinner with him, so he could get to know me better before I married his son. I thought this was sweet of him, so I agreed. Besides, this was a great opportunity to test the water, figuring out if he's ready for the truth yet. We had some small talk over the appetizer. Then suddenly, Dad put down his fork and asked me, How is Kai? It's such a shame to admit, but we've grown distant over the years, and it was all my fault. I know I haven't always been the best father. He trailed off. Kai's good, I replied. I guess it was now or never to say what I wanted to. Actually, he's really happy in Canada. And, well, he has these big dreams of becoming an architect. Oh, I didn't know that. He lowered his head. I just thought he'd want to inherit the company one day. His heart isn't in it. He's so afraid of telling you as he doesn't want to disappoint you. He was silent, and I worried he was going to yell at me, only he didn't. Instead, gave a thoughtful sigh, then replied, Very well. I respect Kai's decision, and I will support him on whichever path he chooses. This was totally unexpected from him. I was so overwhelmed, I left my seat to hug him, and I told him I'd pass the words to Kai. Now I finally knew how much Dad loved Kai, which means he loved me too, right? I just needed to find a good time to tell him the truth. The next day, on my way home from work, I received a frantic phone call from Mom. Turns out Diamond had told everyone in the family that I'd cheated on Kai. As I was trying to figure out what to do next, Dad messaged my Liana phone and demanded I come home at once. On the way home, I thought about what I was going to say to him. Geez, this was terrifying. If it went wrong, Mom and I could end up disowned. I knocked on his study, and in a serious tone, he said, "Come in." Then on seeing me, he continued, "Liana, Diamond seems adamant you are liaising with Kevin behind my son's back. Please explain yourself." I took a deep breath, then blurted out, "The thing is, I'm not cheating on Kai because, well, I am Kai." Then in Kai's voice, I continued, while slowly took off my wig. "I was never actually a boy. Instead, I'm a girl, but Mom didn't want me losing out to Diamond, so she made me pretend to be a boy." He was so shocked. He leaned back in his chair and almost tumbled backward. I explained to him why Mom and I did what we did. It was such a relief, finally having that weight off my shoulders. I knew Dad needed some time to digest this avalanche of information, so I put my wig back on and went to find Mom. She was pacing her bedroom in anxiety. "I've told you to be extra careful around Diamond. Now how are we possibly meant to carry out this plan?" "Don't worry, Mom. I had found a way to resolve this mess." I comforted her, but didn't let her know that I'd told Dad the truth yet, as that would just make her even more anxious. The next few days, Dad still acted normal, as if nothing had happened, and when I walked into the dining room for dinner, I saw Diamond's face drop. She clearly thought Dad would have chucked me out by now. She slammed her fist on the table and yelled at Dad, "Why's she still here?" Ignoring her, he asked Grandpa to pass him the gravy. This only angered Diamond further, and she pointed at me and screamed, "She cheated on Kai! Kick her out of this house!" I put down my cutlery, calmly stood up, and in a confident voice I said, "In fact, I am Kai." It was worth doing just for everyone's reaction. My mom turned white. Diamond was dumbfounded while my grandparents clung onto the table in shock. After I'd explained it all to them in more detail, Diamond was the first to respond. "So you and your mother lied to everyone? This is unacceptable. Get out of this house." Poor Mom looked so ashamed. She couldn't meet Dad's eye as she mumbled out, "Don't blame Liana. She was just a child. It's my fault." Then she pulled my arm and whispered to me that we should leave. Diamond sneered, "Those liars. You deserve that." "Will you please be quiet? Else I advise you to just leave." Dad gave Diamond a stern look. This shocked her, and she sat back down in silence. "I've made a lot of mistakes over the years, and because of them I have many regrets. I was selfish and unkind." He looked at Mom. "It pains me to know that you felt as though I left you with no choice but to lie to me. I love you, but I know how I treated you was cruel. I was so desperate for a child that I sought comfort in someone else. I know I wasn't there for you and Kai, Liana, when you needed me. Now, if you'll let me, I want to make amends." Diamond jumped up to her feet so fast that the whole table wobbled. She screamed out, "This is nonsense!" and stormed off. So, that sure was eventful. But finally, everyone knew the truth, which meant Mom and I didn't have to lie anymore. And best of all, I never had to pretend to be Kai ever again. The following week, I was roaming around the house when I saw Diamond in her room, packing. I stepped in, and she said, "I'll be out of your sight in a blink. Don't worry. I'm leaving for Miami." I knelt next to her. "I don't want you to go. After all, we're sisters." She gave me this wide-eyed look. But I was horrible to you. You must have been through so much being forced to live as a boy." "Yeah, it was hard at times, but it's okay. I can be me now." I smiled. "I know I was mean. I'm sorry. I guess I've always felt like an outsider. I know my mom wants me to claim what's rightfully mine, and I felt so pressured because I'm no match for Kai." "Don't worry about it. We've all done things we regret. Besides, Kai's gone, so you can just be you. You're a great businesswoman, although you might need to tone down a notch on the bossiness. I chuckled. Come on, sis. Let's get you unpacked. When we'd finished, I hugged her and said, Oh, as for Kevin, I think we should fairly compete for his heart. She blushed. Oh, no, it's fine. I used to like him, but he just sees me as a friend. Besides, everyone in the company knows it's you he likes. I felt good that we'd sorted things out. Now I just need to fix things with Kevin, and I had the perfect idea. I messaged him telling me to meet me by the woods close to his old school. Then I went and waited by the tree we once built a den in. He walked over to me, a confused look on his face. Leanna, how did you know about this spot? He sat down next to me and I said, I used to come here with my best friend when I was a kid. He was such a sweet boy. He never judged me or questioned me. It always pained me that I didn't get to say goodbye to him. I could see Kevin's mind ticking away. That's when I took off my wig, wiped away my makeup, and passed him half of a candy bar and said, It's been a long time coming, but I owe you this. He stared at me, open mouth. So, you're Kai and Liana? I said, Yeah, it's me. I'm both. That's why I always felt familiar towards you. This is unbelievable, he continued. Wow. He stared at me through teary eyes. Just wow. I mean, this is crazy. I was so upset when you left, and now here you are. When he got over the initial shock, I told him about my life and why I pretended to be a boy. Afterward, he hugged me tightly and said, I'm not losing you again, Liana. I love you.
I'd just finished my shift and was walking out of the coffee shop to head home when I suddenly heard a voice say, Hi, are you Catherine Mill? Ugh, what else? I'm exhausted already. I reluctantly turned around to a view that almost made me leap out of my skin. Standing in front of me was a girl with a face exactly like mine. Who are you? I stammered. I felt like I was seeing things. She smiled at me and said, I'm Tracy. Is this wallet yours? Oh, wow, you found it. I dropped it at the Seattle Mariners baseball game. I never thought I'd see it again. That's right. We met there. Then Tracy took out a cap and put it on. Hang on. That hat seemed so familiar. And so did that smile. Are you the one I accidentally bumped into at the stadium? That must have been when I dropped my wallet. I was in such a hurry to get to my seat that I'd gone crashing into Tracy. At the time, she was wearing that cap, so all I saw was her smile. But now seeing her standing here, it was like looking in the mirror. I kept staring at her as she said, Yep, that was me. In fact, I came to find you not just to return your wallet, but because I need a favor. Can we chat for a sec? Sure. Let's go back inside the cafe. What favor could she possibly want? Well, I was about to find out. Catherine, I'm just going to say it outright. We have something in common, don't we? I hesitated to speak up, but I knew exactly what she was talking about. She then continued. I mean, look at us. You're basically my doppelganger, which brings me to this favor to ask for. Kathy, I was hoping you'd impersonate me. I'll pay you, of course. I'll pay you a lot. Before I could even reply, Tracy handed me an envelope and showed me a photo of some very posh-looking people. This is my family, she said. Wait, what? Turns out they were royals, or something close to. Her grandfather had been an earl in the UK, and then they'd moved over here to Washington. They're what you'd call an aristocratic family. So, yep, mega wealthy. Must be nice, I thought. However, it was suffocating Tracy, and that all of the duties that came with being from a family of nobility drove her crazy. Plus, one other little problem. She was in love with a guy that her family definitely wouldn't approve of, because he came from a normal family. Her parents had arranged for her to marry the son of one of the country's richest CEOs. And so that's what led us to now. She wanted to hire me to pretend to be her, so that she could be with her lover boy without troubles. I was stunned. what if someone finds out? I muttered and shoved the envelope back into her hands, saying that it was too much money. But Tracy just laughed. Oh, this is just the initial payment. You'll receive so much more. Please, I'm begging you. Think about it. Then she looked at me with proper sadness in her eyes. I really did feel sorry for her, but I needed some time. And it would be better to get my mom's opinion on this first. Ever since I'd been a little girl, I'd always talked things through with her. She was the only family I had, and the only one I could trust and rely on. Mom would know what to do. When I got home, I found my mom waiting for me at the table. We ate dinner together in silence, as I could barely focus. She knew something was up right away. Honey, what happened at work? I hesitated, then handed her the photo of Tracy's family. My mom, as you can guess, was shocked to see how much Tracy looked like me, and so I told her what had gone down earlier. I explained that she offered me a ton of money to impersonate her, but that it felt risky. I'd assumed my mom would be dead set against it, but what she said surprised me. That poor girl. Indeed, how people always say it's not as fun as it looks being too wealthy. But hey, a bit of extra money in your pocket couldn't hurt. I mean, you could use it to pay for your vocal training. And at the same time, you'd help Tracy, so that she can be with her true love. Yeah, becoming a singer had been a lifelong dream of mine. But because of money struggles, I'd had to put that aside. Mom's right. This was my chance. I had to take it. So I called Tracy to seal the deal. She was over the moon about it, and we arranged to meet the next day to start preparing. I thought I'd just have to learn all of her favorite things and maybe borrow some of her clothes so that I didn't get caught out. But no, there was a whole lot more to it than that. For starters, I had to take etiquette classes. Can you even believe? That first day, I had lessons on how to walk properly. They legitimately did put books on my head to improve my posture. And then came the elocution lessons to teach me how to speak more clearly. Seriously, was this Princess Diaries or what? But the best part, though, was her wardrobe. Wow, her outfits were to die for. Now that's what gave me the urge to dive into the royal life now. Everything was going well until we sat down to go through all of her likes and dislikes. Her dislikes were about a mile long. Oh man, Tracy was one fussy girl. I mean, who didn't like pizza? I basically lived off the stuff. Plus, she was vegan, gluten-free, and had a nut allergy. What did she even eat? But despite that, we got through the week. Every morning I had my etiquette classes, which now were easy peasy. I could totally pull it off as a high society girl. And then in the afternoons, I hung with Tracy and learned everything I could about her. By the end of the week, we got all things set and ready for the swap. So Tracy and I went out to celebrate. "Catherine, look at our faces," she said while squinting her eyes. I took a closer look at the phone screen and gotta admit, despite being pretty identical, there were still some differences between us. Sure, her cheekbones were more prominent and her nose was slightly upturned, but with a bit of makeup, I could fix that, right? Tracy wasn't convinced, though. "Listen, I think you're going to need to get plastic surgery." Wait, I wasn't ready for any of that. But on second thought, I guess that would be all right, as it'd only make me prettier, which would totally help with my singing career. So I went under the knife. Not only my nose and cheekbones were fixed, but they also added a birthmark to my shoulder to match the one Tracy had. I looked like an Egyptian mummy with all my bandages on, coming out of the operating room. But when the day came to remove them, I was amazed. Just a little touch-up could make me look this incredible. I twirled around in front of the mirror in one of Tracy's glitzy dresses and just smiled. We were totally going to pull this off. Tracy was even more excited than me. She turned to me and said, "Ready for the family party?" Oh, wow. So my first mission had arrived already. I nervously looked at Tracy, and she just giggled and said, "Oh, don't be nervous. It's just my cousin's baby's first birthday party. No big deal. Although Thomas's whole family will be there. That's the family I meant to marry into. Okay, now I was even more worried. Tracy told me to simply do what I learned in the classes. As for Thomas, she instructed me to just ignore him, as that's what she usually did. He was used to the cold shoulder. Well, the moment I arrived at the party, I was already so overwhelmed. I couldn't believe my eyes. Her cousin's house was basically a palace with butlers and a grand staircase as you entered, just like in the movies. I almost had to pinch myself that I was even there. As I walked in, one of the butlers asked me to follow him through to the banquet hall. A banquet hall? How insane! There were crystal chandeliers hanging from every part of the ceiling, and the room looked like it was literally made from gold. I noticed Tracy's dad standing in the middle of the room with a young couple and a baby. That would be Tracy's cousin, and the baby was obviously the reason this insane party had been thrown. I took a deep breath, gathered myself, and walked towards them in the way my etiquette teacher had taught me. I greeted them casually, and it seemed no one sensed anything weird. Not even Tracy's dad. However, I was still afraid someone would realize. So I grabbed a glass of wine and went to stand in the corner just to be safe. While I was fiddling with the glass and trying not to make eye contact with anyone, a guy came up to me and clinked my glass. Oh boy! The coolest, most handsome guy ever was standing there grinning at me. I smiled back at him politely, trying not to blush, and then I realized, wasn't he Thomas and Tracy, the happy couple? Suddenly, I heard Tracy's dad from a few feet away, speaking towards us. You two look exquisite together. Be good to him now, Tracy, won't you? Yep, it's Thomas, the fiancé that Tracy doesn't like at all. Okay, so I need to act cold towards him, otherwise I'll ruin everything for Tracy. But heck, he was just so good looking. I quickly walked away towards the dessert table and started stuffing my face with some almond cookies, anything to distract myself from Thomas. As I picked up a third one, I heard Thomas scream, and the next moment he was running over to me shouting, Tracy, put it down! There are nuts in those! I dropped the cookie in shock. Right. I was supposed to be allergic to these delicious snacks. Totally forgot that. Gosh. I turned around to see all eyes were on me. This was a disaster. I was like a deer in the headlights. Didn't know what else to do. I pretended to faint. Thomas immediately carried me somewhere while others called the family doctor. I only took a peek when I felt like I was let down on a bed. And wow, even their guest room is gorgeous. Anyway, the doctor did some quick checkup and said I was okay. Well, obviously. Then Thomas rushed over, holding my hand and kept saying, Thank God you're okay, baby. Really? How come Tracy didn't like him? He was so sweet. He was looking at me so lovingly. Wait, at Tracy, actually. Oh boy, this was getting weird. Guess I have started off this mission on the wrong foot. But having that first incident actually helped me become more careful, so I've been getting better and better at playing Tracy. I was like a secret agent that would be summoned by duty at any sec. Sometimes you'd find me as a princess, other times I'd be waiting tables. My life was getting busier, but much more fun in some senses. Then one day, Tracy suddenly appeared at my door, looking all loved up. How strange it was. Usually she only contacted me over the phone. Then she said, Kathy, I have a big mission for you. As she sat down, she put a bulging envelope on the table and said, Kathy, sweetie, I need a big favor this time. So, here's the thing. Me and Arnold are going to Asia for a month, and, I was wondering if you could maybe move into my house and cover for me? I was shocked. A month? That's quite a long time. I mean, surely I'll get caught. Oh, I'm not sure, Tracy. I tried to avoid her eye contact, but she kept begging and looking like she was about to cry. Oh God, what should I do? Guys, please give me some advice. And stay tuned. I'll be back with part 2 to tell you how things go down. Why do I have uneasy feelings about all this? Who put those books on the upper shelf? And why were my clothes in the closet reorganized? Did she seriously go into my room and rearrange my stuff? Unbelievable! Avery, dinner's ready. Okay, Dad. Wait a sec. My dad shouted back. What's taking you so long? Come down now. Dinner is getting cold. Okay, I'm coming. As I walked into the kitchen, I gave her a resentful look. What were you doing? You know dinner's always at 6. Well, that's because she went into my room and reorganized everything. It was like Hurricane Katrina stopped by my room. I had to put everything back where it was. You must be wondering why I had this attitude towards my mom. Well, first, she isn't my mom. She's my stepmom. And second, I just couldn't stand her. You see, my parents divorced when I was 15, and after just 6 months, my dad started dating Rose. My first impressions weren't great. I mean, look at her. Okay, she's kind of beautiful, but her style just doesn't fit her age. She has this whole wannabe rocker thing going on. No, I'm serious. She even has a tank top that says, "I'm a rocker mom." My actual mom was the total opposite of Rose. She looks how a mom's meant to, with her elegant clothes and polite demeanor, and that's also how she raised me to be. Then there's the age difference. Rose is a decade younger than Dad. Suspicious? What if she was only after his money? I thought they wouldn't last, but then 1 year later, they announced that they were getting married. So, yeah, you can see where my hate was coming from. That's enough of me telling you about my family. Let's go back to this boring dinner. My dad just gently said, "Rose was just helping you. She didn't mean it. Now let's dig in. This smells delicious, honey." Ugh, whatever. I rolled my eyes and sat at the table. I looked down and couldn't believe my eyes. It was spinach and sausage lasagna, Mom's signature dish. How dare Rose copy it? First, she rearranged my room, and now she wanted to replace my mom? Talk about a real-life evil stepmom. No way I was going to eat that. So I stood up, said I wasn't hungry, and started walking off. Dad stood up and was about to yell at me, but Rose stopped him. Whatever. I still ran upstairs and slammed my door shut. The next day, when I came home from school, I saw that Rose had a few friends over for beer and pizza in the living room. Look at them. They looked like they were having a band meeting. Normally, women their age have tea parties, not fast food fests. "Hey, Avery." Rose greeted me. I just ignored her and went upstairs. But suddenly, I heard one of her friends say, "What a stubborn kid. Doesn't she have manners? If I were you, I would show the kid who's the boss around here." Jesus, her friends were awful just like her. Whatever, I didn't care what they said. But then Rose replied, "Hey, don't talk about her like that. Avery's a lovely girl. She's just had a lot going on the past 2 years. Every child would behave the same after their parents' divorce, don't they? She just needs a little time adjusting." Oh, wow. I didn't expect those words coming from Rose. She actually stood up for me? Maybe, just maybe, I've misjudged her. Maybe I should try and give her a fairer chance? So, that evening, when I saw her watching a movie, I walked over with a big bowl of popcorn and asked if I could join her. Rose looked shocked, like she'd seen a ghost or something. Then she gave me a big smile and said, "Of course, I would really love that." I sat down next to her, and we watched Mad Max together. Oh, wow. There was a lot of violence and some weird-looking characters. Normally, I don't watch these kinds of films. I'm more of a rom-coms girl. But that movie was really, interesting. We talked during it, and I must say Rose is actually kinda cool. We were both laughing when I heard someone coughing behind me. I turned around to see my mom standing there with a frown on her face. "Avery? Why didn't you return my calls and messages?" "Oh, I haven't introduced my mom to you yet. This is my beautiful mom, Melanie. She's a kind, gentle, elegant woman, and also a bit disciplined. But that's okay. I still love my mom very much. Mom? What are you doing here? I called you 12 times, but you didn't answer. Clearly, you're preoccupied. I got worried, so I swung by to check on you. Oh, sorry, Mom. Rose and I were having so much fun that I didn't notice my phone. My mom knitted her brows and asked, Are we still on for shopping tomorrow? You need a new outfit for the debate contest, right? Yeah, of course. I will meet you at the mall after school. Oh, you two are going shopping? That's so cool. Can I join? At that moment, I thought, what a great idea. I mean, so far, they seem to get along okay. But what I didn't know was that a war between my mom and my stepmom had just launched. Rose gave me an excited smile, but Mom, on the other hand, didn't look so thrilled. Maybe she was still mad that I missed her calls? So the next day after school, I went outside and saw my mom standing by her car. Oh, was she waiting for me? I was about to walk toward her when I suddenly noticed she was giving dirty looks to someone. Oh my God, Rose was waiting on the other side of the street. I quickly jumped behind some bushes to hide from them. Don't tell me the two were here to pick me up. Suddenly, my phone rang. It was Mom. There's no way I was deciding between them, so I told her I was already on my way to the mall. Ugh. Now, let's talk about my fun family day out at the mall. It was a disaster. My mom and Rose have very different style, obvs, so my mom chose this elegant black vest and skirt for me, but Rose thought I looked like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. No offense, she's a badass who brought justice to women, but Rose was kinda right. That outfit just didn't work for me. Then Rose chose this red dress for me, but oh man, that's kinda revealing. They were constantly dragging me from this shop to the other like they were playing tug of war, and I was the freaking rope. I couldn't handle it anymore. Therefore, I just chose any dress so they'd stop throwing clothes in my face. On the way out of the mall, we passed a piercing shop. I've been wanting a helix piercing at the upper cartilage of my ear. They look so cool. I asked Mom, but she profusely refused. Her own words were, "It would make you look rebellious." Mom was still strict as always. Nonsense. Rose snorted. Melanie, Avery's old enough to make her own decisions. If she wants a piercing, then let her. Then she turned to me and said, "Come, I will take you inside." Oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I glanced at Mom, and she looked like she was about to explode with anger. But Rose had a point. I'm already 16 for crying out loud. After 15 minutes, Rose and I came out. Oh, thank God. Did you reconsider getting that ear piercing? Oh, yeah. Rose said that a nose piercing would suit me better. What? Uh-oh. Maybe the nose piercing wasn't such a good idea, because the tension between them was now catastrophic. I needed a way to bring them together. So I came up with a brilliant plan. I arranged a holiday in Brazil for us all. I have a friend there, Pedro. He was an exchange student at my school, so he could show us around. Dad was in on the plan. At the last minute, he pretended to be busy and canceled his spot. Perfect! Now Rose and Mom would have plenty of bonding time. As soon as we walked into the hotel lobby, they started fighting over who got to share a room with me. What's wrong with them? We just landed in Brazil. So I took the keys from the receptionist and told them they were sharing, 'cause I'll be by myself. Then in the evening, after we all got some rest, I waited for them in the lobby. Man, what's taking them so long? Suddenly, I saw two women walking over, and they were pushing each other. My God, it was Rose and Mom. I tried to keep calm and said, "Jesus, can you two please stop acting like kindergarten kids?" Mom sneered. Well, Rose over here took a 45-minute shower while I urgently needed to use the bathroom. You know how sensitive my stomach is. Rose rolled her eyes. That's because I have a strict beauty routine to follow. At least you got some sleep. I didn't, thanks to your bulldozer snoring. I certainly did not. Then they began to stare off like two UFC fighters. I shouted, "Enough already! Listen up. I just made a dinner reservation for you two to get to know each other better. I have plans with Pedro, so I'll catch you both later." They were about to refuse, but I gave them this really intense look. "Well, at least you're having fun. You two should hit a bar. Nothing can top some Brazilian bars. No drinking, and be back by 10 p.m. tops." Yeah, I know. Have fun." I waved at them and left the hotel. The next morning, I saw them talking to each other. Actually talking, not bickering. So I walked over to them and asked, "Well, how was dinner?" Then they told me it was actually really great. They were able to put their differences aside and got along. Success! So now I could enjoy the rest of the trip. After breakfast, Pedro came by to take us on a hiking trip in the forest. It was so wonderful. The fresh air, the birds singing. Well, maybe except for the heat and the mosquitoes. Pedro wanted to bring us to this spot he said was perfect for watching the sunset. Awesome! It was all going well at first, but then as Rose avoided a tree branch, it accidentally hit my mom. "My God, you hit me on purpose, didn't you?" "What? That's absurd. I was just avoiding the branch." "Oh, please, as if." "Are you saying that I'm lying?" "Hey, guys, stop it. Let's be more understanding and talk things out. Like how you did it last night, okay?" That's when I found out that they were just pretending to be friends so that I didn't set up any more dinners for them. Oh my God, unbelievable! After their friendship act was exposed, they began speed hiking, like they were in a competition or something. But yep, after only 15 minutes, they were exhausted and couldn't even stand straight anymore. I began to shout at them. "This is great! Your dumb feud is ruining my vacation!" Then I walked away to avoid them, but of course, not too far. As I walked, I tried to think of another plan to get them close. Then I realized I'd wandered further away from the group. "Okay, Avery, don't panic. Pedro had given me a map of the forest. I just needed to get to that marked X." It sounded easy. Trust me, it wasn't. I walked for hours and still couldn't find the spot. Oh no. It was getting dark, and I was totally exhausted. I sat on the ground and couldn't hold back my tears. I was about to lose hope when I suddenly heard Rose and Mom's voices. Oh, great! I was lost and could still hear them arguing in my head. I must be losing my mind. But wait. Suddenly, they appeared from behind some trees. It was really them. I couldn't believe it. I ran into their arms and gave them both the biggest hug ever and cried like a baby. Before we went to the airport to head home, Pedro came to say goodbye. Thanks for the hiking trip and also carrying out my plan. No problem. Your plan was definitely crazy, but it totally worked. After you went missing, they actually teamed up to find you. They helped one another when one tripped down or got exhausted and kept each other motivated. Pedro grinned at me, then continued. I too was freaking out when I didn't see you at our meeting point. Luckily, I still found you. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that pretending to be lost was a part of my plan, but what I didn't expect was to actually get lost. Thank God for Pedro. And you know what? After that incident, my mom and Rose grew close. Actually, a bit too close, I think. They even sometimes hang out without me. Can you believe it? Turns out, even though they have two very different personalities and styles, they still have one big thing in common. They both love me.